Hey, this is Nathan here with Twisted Roots Home Decor in Brooks, Alberta. I have teamed up with Designer Epoxy to bring you a tutorial video on pouring a white Carrera marble countertop. I've gone ahead and done the seal coat already on the piece. And so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to do a tape dam around, and we're going to do the second pour, which is going to be our flood coat. And we're also going to do our veins through the top of the countertop as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get some measurements here quick, just so I know how much epoxy I'm going to need for the pour. Today, what we are using is we're using Designer Epoxy's Art Cast Epoxy. This stuff is absolutely fantastic. It has the highest UV rating out of any epoxy out there. It works absolutely fantastic for countertops. Really good for resisting scratches. You gotta, when you're mixing it up, it's a mix time of 3 to 3.5 minutes. Working time, you're 45 to 55 minutes of working time. And then from there, the initial cure time is going to be 12 to 14 hours, dry to the touch in 8 to 10 hours, and then final cure is going to be about 24 hours. So what we're going to do is go ahead, get the tape dam set up around the perimeter, and then we'll get pouring. Alrighty, so now we have the dam built. The whole purpose of a dam when you're doing epoxy pour on a countertop like this is you want to keep some of the epoxy sitting up top, so when you peel the tape, you're going to get a nice consistent flow over the edges. The whole reason for that, you're going to get a nicer edge around. If you just pour without a dam, it's going to start to run off on you, and you're going to have very thin edges all the way around. So that is the whole point of this. I do 3 wraps around with the tape. Some guys do 1, some guys do 2. I just find if I do one that's kind of mid section, then go lower, I just get a better seal all the way around, and then I do an initial or a final wrap around up at the top again, just to give it some rigidity. So got that done. We got our measurements. So we've got 73 inches times 26 across times, we're going to be doing an 1/8 of an inch thick pour for this. So times 0.125. So that's going to give us about almost 4 liters, 3.89 liters. So I like to work in liters. A lot of guys work in ounces. It's whatever you prefer. So then for this, you're going to need some rubber gloves as well for mixing. I always recommend it. You just don't want to get any on your hands, and it's all over the place, right? So we've got that all figured out. Our amount, we're going to get mixing 4 liters together of the art cast, and we are going to be putting in some white, the super white liquid pigment from Designer Epoxy. That's what I used on the base, and that's what we're going to be using for this pour as well. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to get pouring the epoxy into the bucket. Need our trusty gloves on. Now there's part A, part B, and they've gone ahead and color coded too, just so you don't mess up and make a mistake of pouring, double of one. So when you are mixing your epoxy, be as accurate as you can. That's one big thing. When I first started out pouring, I tried, a little more hardener, a little less hardener, all that stuff, and I had some disasters. So big thing is start with either one. A lot of guys say start with B first. Some guys say start with A. I've never found a difference. So as you can see, I've got a heating pad here as well. So what I do with my epoxy before, because where I store it, it sits at about 17 degrees. And I want to get it up to about 22, 23 degrees, somewhere in that range. Just get a little nicer flow when you pour. So I keep it on a heating pad while I'm starting out. And then as I'm mixing in the bucket, I'm going to put it back on the heating pad just to keep it up at that temperature. So we'll go ahead. We'll pour 2 liters of part A. I'm going to go with 4 liters just so I have extra. When you're doing epoxy countertops, more is better than not enough. That I have found out, because once you've poured it, you don't want to be mixing again in between. Now we'll pour part B, another 2 liters of that, because this art cast is a 1-to-1 ratio. So that's why we're doing 2,000 milliliters to 2 liters of part A, 2,000 of part B. Okay. And now with mixing the art cast, I see a lot of guys online using a mixer on their drill. Downside to that, it's going to create a lot of bubbles. So you want to keep as little bubbles into the epoxy. You want as little as possible. So I mix by hand. Again, we're going to be mixing for 3 to 3.5 minutes, and just nice and slow. And we're going to mix in the liquid pigment, the super white from Designer Epoxy as well. Get that all mixed up, and then we'll get it poured out. So I'll get mixing that, and we'll come back. Alrighty, so now we've got it mixed up. Again, we mixed it for 3 to 3.5 minutes, nice and slow. When you're mixing, you just want to make sure too that you get the sides, get the bottom. Again, just nice and slow. It doesn't have to be nice. It doesn't have to be fast. And again, I just like to check my temperature for myself. Again, you don't have to heat it up. We're at 23 degrees, which is perfect for me, is what I like it at. Again, it all depends on where you store your epoxy. If you store it where it's 23 degrees already, you're not going to have to heat it up at all. So now that we're all mixed up, I always like to take my tongue depressor and just let the epoxy kind of sit and run so I can see what my consistency is like to make sure that I have enough color in there that's going to cover over anything that I pour it over. Okay, so now we are ready to pour it out on there. And this doesn't have to be in any specific way. You can just kind of start in one spot, just kind of pour it all out. Again, it's self-leveling, so it's going to do most of the leveling itself. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go around and help it with my hand and just move it around. A lot of guys use a scraper, but it's not needed. So like I say, I just kind of move it back and forth. Again, good reason to wear the gloves. And it just breaks the surface tension on all the areas. Kind of rub it into the corners a bit, and down to your edges. And then after that, it'll do the rest of the work. Another thing you can use for this too is a lot of people will use a paintbrush. Kind of ran it over the side there. A paintbrush and chop it kind of into place. I don't like the paintbrush because I haven't found one paintbrush that the hairs don't come off the brush and then they end up in your epoxy. Then you're digging them out. That's a bit of a pain in the butt. So I found this method seems to just work the best. Because then you can kind of feel the consistency in all the areas. And again, we've got 45 to 55 minutes of working time, so we've got lots of time here. So there's no rush. I used to get so panicked and so anxious doing this, rushing myself, and there was no need for it. So, all right, that's looking pretty good. We just got some spot over here that we'll push some into. Okay. Just kind of go down. Okay. So we're gonna let this set up for a few minutes. And what I'm gonna do as well is I'm gonna take the heat gun, just go over top, get some of the bubbles out, and then we're gonna mix up the white satin gray in just a small amount that we're gonna need to do our veins, and we'll get doing our veins here right away. Alrighty, so now I went through, and this is leveling out right now. We gave it a few minutes. I went with the heat gun as well, just to kind of bust up any bubbles along the edges especially. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix up just a small portion of the satin white gray from Designer Epoxy. So we'll mix this pigment in. Like I say, we're not gonna need a lot. So a little bit of that. This is going to be tons. But I forgot to grab a smaller cup. So this is what I'm using. All right. We're going to take this satin white gray, stuck together. Take a little bit of this, and we're going to want it pretty, pretty dark amount. So that's going to be, about right. And we're just going to take, and we're slowly going to mix this up. So I'll get this mixed up. We'll come back, and we'll start doing our veins. All right, now we've got the satin white gray mixed up. All I use is just the tongue depressor is what I'm going to use. There's different methods on how do you do it, but the biggest thing is we're just going to do some basic simple veins through it. It's a nice simple countertop. So we're just going to start in this corner, kind of go up and around. We'll hit that corner after, do another one over here in the corner. So biggest thing with this is when you start, don't start above your countertop. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a big sperm. So you want to start off the table or off the counter, and then enter on. So we'll show you here. So get a decent amount on. We're just going to go like this. Doesn't have to be anything spectacular. We can just bring that around. It doesn't really matter kind of what you do. It's going to turn out super cool. Better move my calculator, my book, so don't get any epoxy on it. Again, start off the table. We're going to come and just kind of break it up and around. Makes a bit of a mess, but that's why I have the poly down, so that you don't have to really worry about cleanup after. So again, we're just going to start here. We'll just do a nice thicker one there. And then we'll just get this corner up over here. I'll just do that there. Okay. Now that we got that done, what I like to use, some guys take the tongue depressor and they're just going to break up the color a little bit with the tongue depressor. I like to use the heat gun. I just find it gives a little cooler effect to it. Again, don't get too close too long because you can overheat the epoxy pretty good. And again, we're just going to mix it around here a bit and shape it. Make it look more like natural rock. And as you get close to the edges, you don't want to heat too much close to the edge because it can release your tape. I've had that happen millions of times, so I've learned. Because what this is going to do is it's going to run off, so you're going to get a cool line anyway coming off the edges. That is looking cool. Just simple, but it's just going to be such a beautiful countertop. This is one of the most popular countertops right now, the white Carrera marble countertop. Designer Epoxy has people asking about it like crazy, so that's why he's asked me to do this tutorial video so that people can learn how to do it themselves. Why not teach you? This is how I learned, watching videos online. So again, like and subscribe because this is what helps me out, as well as the more followers and subscribers I get, the more it helps my business out as well. And it's going to help Designer Epoxy as well, because he does have an amazing product line. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to leave that for a little bit here. What we're going to do is about an hour is what I like to leave it. Depends on the temperature in the room. Hour, maybe a little bit longer, and then we're going to come back and we're going to peel the tape and let the epoxy run over and reveal our beautiful countertop. So we'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so it's been just a short amount of time, but I just wanted to come back and just show you what the veins are looking like. I did a little bit of work on them off camera, just on the edge ones there. But look how cool that looks. It's just like natural rock. So shiny. It's going to look pretty cool. So like I say, we'll come back in a little more time, pull the tape, and let it run. Alrighty, so we're roughly around our time. Again, you're going to kind of, as you do it, you're gonna find you may pull the tape too soon, too late. You can't really pull it too late unless you wait like 4 or 5 hours. But because you can always go with a heat gun and just kind of warm it up, and it'll move for you a little bit if you pull it a little too late. But I find hour and a half, depending on temperature, is going to be about the best for myself, is what I find. So I'm just going to start, kind of get a spot to tear, and then I'm just going to go around, and we'll just start peeling her off. This is the messy part, and you want to pull down so that it doesn't lift up your epoxy, and pull it back onto the table. Come over this side. So as you can see, it's starting to run over nicely. We're going to get some really cool lines from the veins coming down. Oh, yeah, a little bit that's stuck there. I'll have to come back and get that again. That's why we pull down. I didn't pull down enough at that corner. And then the back side here is just the back side of the counter, so it's not a big deal. Not really too worried about that spot. But throw this in the garbage and grab my knife here and we'll peel my glove off. And just to get that piece off the corner before we start running down too much. Yeah, it's going to be fun. There we go. Okay. So then what we can do, as you can see, it's kind of leaving some lines. We'll let it run for a little bit and see what it does. But what you can do is if there's a spot that doesn't have any epoxy on it, you can just kind of take, I like to just go and just kind of tap these lines just to break up the surface tension so that the epoxy that's flowing down over top here will flow nicely. Just kind of pull it down. You don't want to rub side to side because that's going to give you kind of a rough look. So I'll just do this all the way around, and then we'll give it a few minutes and come back and check on it and go from there. Alrighty, so we're nearing the end. We're almost there. So again, just to go over a few things. Initial cure times 12 to 14 hours with the art cast. Dry to the touch 8 to 10 hours. And then full cure is going to be about 24 hours. I try not to set anything on the counter for at least 7 days is what I try to do. It's always going to stay a little bit soft underneath until it's fully cured up. And I just find, after about 3 or 4 days, if you set something on it that's heavy, you may get some imprints. So I leave it for about 7 days so it really hardens, and so that you've got a nice solid countertop. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go around. As you can see, it's dripping a bit. So I'm just going to come over here. We're just going to take a popsicle stick and just kind of run. We'll do this a couple times in the next little bit here. Just kind of run this around the bottom just to knock off those little runs. And then what you can always do after as well is once it's fully cured, flip it, sand off the little tits, and then you'll be good to go. So there. So that is how to pour a white Carrera marble countertop. Again, using Designer Epoxy's Art Cast Epoxy. Amazing stuff. Check him out at designerepoxy.ca. He's got some great deals, great products. And again, check me out. I've got all my social medias, Twisted Roots Home Decor. Again, we're in Brooks, Alberta. But again, check us out on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Don't know if I forgot any, but that's about all of them. So we'll catch you next time on the next video. Thanks.